Welcome back to another episode of FinCrime&Me. Just before I start this episode, I have a humble ask for my audience. 80.6% of you are not subscribed to my channel. To help me grow my channel and bring amazing guests onto the show, please press the subscribe button now. And I'll start our episode by introducing someone who I am very excited to have on today, all the way from Africa, Joyce Nkini-Iwisi, and currently a partner at HKA. Joyce, welcome to my show, and it's so wonderful having you here, and especially from Africa. I can't believe that I messaged you and to have our stars aligned where you are in the UK today to actually have you on. Welcome to the show, and I hope you're excited as I am.
I'm very excited. Thank you, Carol.
I guess the first question will always be to let us know about your background. How have you grown in your journey? And for the audience to also understand your journey in investigations.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. Such a pleasure. I think for many of us that have gone through the investigation career path, I've been in the industry for close to 20 years now. We stumbled upon being corporate investigators because back in the day, they weren't really courses at university that taught investigations as per se. Mm-hmm. So many of us would have come from the law enforcement backgrounds or from accounting backgrounds, legal backgrounds, and somehow forged our way into becoming corporate investigators. So that's very similar to my journey as well. I started in the Big Four as an auditor by trade at the time, with EY, and then joined PwC to become an advisor. So as a management consultant, specifically in the area of financial advisory. And during that time, we started looking at specific transactions as part of our advisory work. And then I grew into doing investigative work at the time. And so over the years, I've grown into doing various courses and becoming a certified corporate investigator. And I now have the pleasure of sitting on the advisory panel of the Association of Corporate Investigators. It's UK-based, but now going more global. And they now actually have a certification for that, which is something I'm very keen on doing. But in South Africa, where I'm based, we have the ICFP that does courses that actually get you certified in commercial forensic practicing. And also now the universities today also do a lot of degrees and even master's programs on corporate investigations. But my path has been very similar to those that have been in the industry for close to 20 plus years, where, you start sort of in legal or accounting and then you grow into doing corporate investigations. So I think many of us have the experience and have had to do top-up courses to eventually practice in the field of investigations.
When you say corporate investigations, what typology does that cover?
Mm-hmm. So corporate investigations is a broad term for commercial investigations, employment or labor law investigations. And this could be investigations in the workplace conduct space, and then also doing investigations that have a financial crime element to it. So it's a broad term, but basically looking at investigations in the corporate setup rather than in, when you say investigations, my son, for example, often says to me, oh, my mom does FBI type work. And I'm like, no, that's not the type of work that I do.
Slightly different, but just as cool.
And I often worry that he's in school saying this sort of thing.
She works for FBI.
And I often have to say to him, no. It's corporate investigations. It's investigations in the corporate setup. We do work often with the law enforcement bodies or regulators to support them where they are looking at specific cases that relate to clients that we are supporting. but we definitely complement each other in that respect. However, when you look at corporate investigations, it's within the corporate setup, within the workplace. I particularly also do a lot of work in the conduct space, where we're looking to support cases in bullying, harassment, sexual harassment, human rights violations. And I think then it covers more broadly corporate investigations as it is.
How is the compliance landscape or investigations landscape in Africa as compared to other regions?
That's a really good question. So my role in the past 10 years has been covering the EMEA region. So when you look at investigations in the Europe landscape, Middle East, Africa, they vary significantly. In Africa, there's a different growth trajectory amongst the 50 plus states. You find South Africa, where I'm based, has a different level of maturity in the way that it views investigations or corporate investigations. There's a lot of advancement in the type of work that we do. However, once you start going up north into sub-Saharan Africa, it varies significantly. You have multinationals operating in those jurisdictions actually taking a keen interest on looking into setting up compliance departments that not only are inward focused in that within the organization themselves, they're looking at certain compliance setups to advance how they look at certain aspects within their own internal structures, but also from an external perspective, having regulatory compliance. So multinationals do a good job of setting that up, because you'd find that something set up in a head office somewhere in Europe or in the US, and it then translates into how it is set up in the local jurisdictions within Africa. Local companies struggle quite a bit with having compliance frameworks, compliance structures. It's a very immature space within the region when it comes to local or family-owned businesses. But I think it's grown significantly in the last 10 plus years, because there's been an adoption and there's been a push because of the regulatory fines that come up with non-compliance. So when you look at, and that's the compliance side, which in most cases is a proactive measure that organizations set up. From an investigation standpoint as well, very similar in terms of patterns, in that not many organizations that are locally owned or family-owned business would have the sense of maturity to have a forensic investigation department that is fully fledged or even included in a risk management division. Not so. You'd have, or maybe the HR division has someone that has an investigation background that would help conduct investigations, or you'd have someone in the risk division that has some sort of background. But in South Africa, you find that a lot of organizations, whether local or multinational focused organizations, have forensic divisions, very many at time independent divisions to the risk department, very independent to the HR division. But as I said, the pattern's very similar. As you start going up north into sub-Saharan Africa, much less of that differentiation exists. But I think also with the growth of fines in the market, there's been a push to have that setup actually happen. Yeah.
So I guess a takeaway for our audience is that if it is a multi-international company, then they have more measures, but it can still be a struggle with local businesses. How has the landscape changed since you first started at EY till now?
Yeah, I think it's changed. One of the big advantages we have in Africa is the foreign direct investment that's coming into the region, or PE and VC firms that are looking to invest within the region. Compliance is a very big aspect for them. And so before they make an investment into an entity in the region, they do their checks and balances and make sure that they have a sound compliance department in place, or compliance measures or compliance structures actually functioning. So that has helped over time, with the maturity of the industry and the sector in general, you find that even before, for example, from a due diligence perspective, which is an area I support many of our clients with, they will make sure that they check that if this is not in existence before they acquire a target, they make sure that this is actually something that they have in the plans to set up and make sure it's functional. So the trend is very progressive. And I think we've reached a level of good maturity where it's more renowned. We've got a compliance institute in Africa that operates in various jurisdictions. So there's more awareness actually that's happening in respect to the space.
Are the frameworks more, influenced by outsiders? So the Western influence from America, from Europe?
I think there's a fair balance. The regulators have helped significantly with the push. I mean, I think where the past is involved, where there's a fine involved, you find organizations have no choice but to set up measures. Sectors also vary. In the banking or the financial services sector, you find that compliance is a big deal, mainly because the regulatory banks, let's say the central banks, have a big push when it comes to compliance-related aspects. So the regulators, I think, play a big role in how this drives our sector in terms of compliance. And also when you look at the anti-corruption bodies, they also play a big role in relation to financial crime, how this is approached from a business level. And so I think I wouldn't say it's just external focus that's led to the push, but I think also just from a local level, the regulators have played a big role in terms of how the setup and the structures work for businesses that conduct themselves within the region. Yeah.
As you are recently partner at HKA, and you've, of course, had such a great journey where you've continued to grow, what is your view on the promotion process in Africa as compared to other regions?
I would maybe comment on that specifically within our industry and in our sector as per se. I think our sector, first of all, has been very male-dominated for a long time. It still is. Very sadly, it still is. For a long time, I worked with international organizations. I still do work with international organizations, but many people in the field of corporate investigations in our region continue to be male. And I would say older male individuals. And so we particularly in South Africa actually have various siloed groups for women in investigations and women in compliance, so that we sit and team up and exchange ideas on how we can support and promote young female compliance and investigation officers to have a space. I also work very closely with some ladies in the Middle East that are also very they're very similar-minded in sort of promoting women in compliance as well. I'm an ambassador of an organization there that's doing a lot in terms of women in mentoring for compliance specialists. And I think we need this type of bodies just to help look at what we faced as challenges as women in the sector to grow. The promotion is not easy because you've got to prove yourself on various levels. You've got to prove meritocracy. And then you've also got to prove that as a woman, you can actually do it. I remember with my time at Control Risks, I joined and we had totally like a male leadership. And by the time I had left, we had more women in Africa that were doing investigations, and they still continue to do fantastic work in investigations in that space. But it was a growth journey for us. Not very many women in the space. And we also had great support from our clients, actually. because you've got clients that have female leaders in the investigation and compliance space and often promote supporting each other.
Yeah.
And I think it's really helped with getting that level of promotion, not just from an internal perspective, because I think when people think promotion, they think, oh, when am I going to make senior manager? When am I going to make director? When am I going to make partner? I think of it in two ways. You can have that internal promotion, but you also need to think of the external promotion. How do you get more clients on board as a woman in investigations? It's not easy. How do you interact with more stakeholders in the regulatory space? It's not easy when many around the table in a boardroom are men.
Yeah,
and you
90% of the time.
Exactly, and you have to sort of make your way past proving just the technical aspects that you have, and having them look past the fact that you're actually a woman that has meritocracy to her as well. So I think over the years, I sadly again reiterate, it's still a male-dominated field. But I think with the growth and evolution of sort of women in the space, it's helped significantly.
Yeah. So what would your one piece of advice be to women who want to enter the field?
I would say enter the field. You can't play when you're outside.
Yeah.
You need to enter the field. You need to enter to play. Yeah. And one aspect that I think, and I keep emphasizing, that's why the work that we do in the workplace space for investigation is quite critical, is that we've seen many a time that sometimes women are forced to get into certain activities, maybe advances, or give into certain advances just to make space for themselves. Forget about that, because that is it's not going to take you anywhere. It's not, and it's going to feel horrible about it.
Yeah.
But you need to be having your integrity on point. You need to emphasize on the merit that you bring to the table, and that's the longevity of growth and success in the field. So I would say you need to get into the play field for you to play. Forget this whole pay to play type situation. You won't grow. No. But I think with mentors, with coaches, you're bound to succeed.
I think that's really important, because being part of these groups, and I completely agree, in the investigations field, it is 90% male. That's still seen today. As much as there are changes, I just don't think there's enough for females to really get to that leader level. And if it does happen, it's quite far and few in between. Yeah. I also agree when it comes to investigations, hold your integrity and make sure you are getting promoted for the right reasons. But I do also still find sometimes you are being compared to your male counterparts, but on a higher level. It's like if, a male has to hit 5, criteria points, I always feel like a female still has to do a bit more than that, just to show that they know what they're doing, and there is merit to her being there and to her promotion as well. And I also agree with having a good mentor. I think a good mentor can really help you on your path, but can also help you see things outside. Just like you said, it's not just internal promotion, it's also external. It's also building your network and putting yourself out there. And I don't think there's enough of that in the investigations field. Which is actually why I started this podcast, just to get a bit more shining light into what there is out there and to see the differences in what males experience and what females experience, but also what tools there are. So I think if anyone, especially female, listening to this, those are the points that I would want for them to take away is, look for a good mentor, join these groups, and just put yourself out there and join the field, see what happens, but you can only play from inside. Yes,
for sure. I remember when as a young management consultant, we had there's almost a tradition on Fridays for golf, and the male colleagues would go out and golf with clients, and you wouldn't see the female colleagues join them as much as, it would have been great for that to happen. And it's not that they were saying, don't come. It's just there's certain spaces that perhaps you might feel like you don't belong because the setup there is like you get there and there's mostly men golfing, whatever. And one of the things that we talk about in our groups is we don't need to replicate exactly what the men are doing for us to have the same success as men in the industry. There are things that we could do as women in investigations that are comfortable for us and that we feel that we have a space where we belong. So, for example, with women in mentoring in the Middle East, there's often dates where I would say in a month, can we have a catch up? And this would be like a dinner. And it's just a bunch of women in compliance around the table. And it would be such a nice, jolly catch up, But that helps with the networking. That helps with getting to know people better and expanding on your network. As your network is your net worth. That the saying is there for a reason. And we do the same thing in South Africa where we have, sort of dinners and catch-ups. And in those dinners and catch-ups, quite honestly, we hardly talk about work. And in that moment, you're feeling, I'm not consumed just as
by work talk.
Just work, There's people that are doing the same job that I do that find space and time to just let off some steam. And in those moments, you create really good bonds with each other. And it helps you have that person when you're having a really bad day at work to call up and have a chat and exchange ideas in a more informal setup. So again, it's not about doing the things that men do to get to where they've gotten to, but having comfortable spaces to form really genuine bonds, create that network, create that support system that helps you grow not just in your personal journey, but in your career journey. So it's different ways to slice the pie and get you to your end goal. The point that you made on mentorship, I would say I've found that there's a significant difference between a mentor and a coach. And for a long time, I didn't believe in coaching. But one thing that I know today to be for a fact in my life is that for you to actually excel, especially at a much more advanced level of career growth, is you need a coach. You need that person that's walked your journey, that's much older than you, that can actually have a one-on-one conversation and help you filter through certain aspects that you have doubts about and get to an answer, not necessarily your coach telling you the answer, but you evaluating and getting to the answer on your own. And that's a whole different person from a mentor that I have found in my career journey would be someone that I would have conversations with, career growth, career plans. That's a much broader conversation. I find that coaches do a really good job of helping you unpack things that might be quite fuzzy in decision-making processes and helping you get by yourself to the point where you actually deduce a solution internally for a problem that you might be having from a career perspective. So I would say that you need to invest greatly on the right mentor, have the right chemistry with the person, invest in a career coach, know the difference between the two, and know when you need what in your life so that you have an informed decision as to how you approach your growth and your career journey.
Just to help our audience and also for me to learn, what is the difference of having what's the difference between a coach and a mentor?
I think it varies person to person.
Okay.
And that's a very I think it's a subjective topic. In my life, I found that a mentor is someone that has a broad purpose in my life, and a career coach for me, or a professional coach, not just a career coach, can help me unpack certain specific aspects that I need to unpack when I'm making a decision. And I found that I can work with a mentor that can help me have a wide view of growth, not just from a career perspective, but from a full journey perspective. A career coach or a professional coach, actually, the person that I am considering onboarding to be my coach is someone that I thought of for a long time as a friend. And when I had a difficult decision to make last year, she is a professional coach. We sat for 4 hours on like a very dark night. It was like at 10 p.m. And for 4 hours to about 2 a.m., she said to me by the end of those 4 hours, I'm doing coaching here and you don't have a coach contract with me.
That's brilliant.
And that's the day I understood the difference for me between who I have in my life as a mentor and what she does as a coach. And I learned, because for a very long time, I thought the two could actually sort of be the same or play the same role. But actually, and that's why I say it's very subjective and it's a very personal distinction that you need to make in your life to determine who is going to be your mentor and who is going to be your coach. Because I find that for me, a coach is someone that is going to help me unpack an issue and not replace someone that I would say is a counselor or a therapist. It's not the same thing. I guess that's the third.
I think that's the third. That's the third aspect, sometimes people put coaches and mentors as someone who's a therapist and helps you unpack in a different way. A career coach is completely different. With a career coach, would you say a good career coach is someone that is in a position that you want to be in, or someone that you aspire to be, or someone that, just you've seen grow through their own journey, and it might not be in investigations, for example?
Yeah, so exactly. So point 3 that you made, not necessarily, I would not necessarily say a coach is someone that I would look at as I want to walk their same journey, but I would look at this person as someone that's got the wisdom to help me unpack an issue and not tell me the answer to the issue, but actually help me unpack different aspects that might not be very as well compartmentalized in my thought process. But someone, I would say, that's much older, someone that's been through a journey of their own, that's got the nuggets and the wisdom to help me filter and get to the answer of something that is quite confusing, because there are things that will be quite confusing in your career journey. And you need that person that's going to help you unpack feelings from technical aspects of a problem. Again, not a counselor or a therapist, but someone that's done it for themselves, perhaps in their own career journey, and that's able to help you get to your truth and your answer on your own, and not necessarily tell you this is what you should do. I personally don't think that's the right type of coach. Someone that says this is the way you need to go.
This is your solution.
This is not.
It's quite nice to have someone that helps you see things in a different way. But also, you're right. If you get to that point yourself, that's a life lesson, and that's something that you will take forward more proactively as well.
Yeah, and you own it. And because it might not work out, right? And you don't want to say, oh, I made this decision because my career coach Pearl said this is the way I need to go. That's not it, right? You need someone to help you unpack and help you get there on your own without necessarily telling you that this is what you need to do and this is what, though they need to help you get to that point, and then you make the decision on your own, and you own that decision. Because if it doesn't work out, then you know exactly why you made that decision, and then work your way back into getting it right.
Yeah. And that takes accountability as well. If you take the decision, you know what you can fix if it's right or wrong, and also how to move forward from that. Yeah. I think that's very important.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm interrupting this episode to remind you to stay safe online. Scams are everywhere, ready to take your hard-earned money. Please ensure that you do not share your passwords, do not click on unusual or unexpected links that come through your emails, text messages, and even WhatsApp, especially when they purport to be from your bank, card company, the government, your crypto exchange, and even family and friends. If you do fall victim to a scam, please report this to your local police as soon as possible. Please also report this to your bank, your card companies, and even your crypto exchange. Please stay safe online. Thank you, and let's go back to the episode. Just a question, because this is something I always find with investigators. Do you think that you see scenarios in a logical way more than an emotional driven way?
Yeah, and it's a conversation I have a lot with very close friends where they sort of tell me sometimes, oh, you have no heart to you. And I said,
I get told that too.
And I said, no, it's not about that. It's logic, right? Yeah. I think we unpack things based on logic. And sometimes, again, with the work that I do in the workplace stuff, you need to have some sort of empathy. And it's a good thing to have empathy in the process. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we deal with facts and we deal with merits. Yeah. And that's sort of the logical journey of how we get to concluding on a matter, right? Yeah. So I think we are more logic-based, and sometimes it becomes who you are as a person. And so when you deal with things in a very informal setup, even with your own partner or with your own friends, they might think, oh, okay, this person doesn't have emotion to them. But actually, it's the trade that we're in that we are very logic-based. We are very we unpack things in a systematic way. And we try to get to the answers as quickly as we possibly can, because most of our matters are quite urgent and we don't really have the luxury of time. Yeah. And so it's a problem-focused mode that you're in almost 24/7.
That is very true. Sometimes I actually think, when can I, let my guard down and be more emotional? But I just can't. Like, your work does become you in that sense of those traits where you think of things logically, but you're very solution oriented. You're correct in saying that you get to the answer and you want to get to the answer, and it's time critical. So that's how you actually see everything outside of work as well. So speaking of work and investigations, you investigate whistleblowing cases, and in a high-risk jurisdiction, being, Africa, but predominantly South Africa. What obstacles do you come across?
Whistleblowing has become a topic that has a lot of scrutiny at the moment, more so in South Africa. We've had whistleblowers being killed, but in Africa in general, whistleblowing has a very historic aspect to it that I think many organizations that are multinational that have an understanding of whistleblowing setups in their own jurisdictions, I think need to appreciate when it comes to Africa. There's a historical aspect to whistleblowing that dates back to the colonial period, and in South Africa, more specifically to the period of apartheid, where whistleblowers at the time, for example, in South Africa, were called impimpis. These are people that told on their fellow Africans to the apartheid government at the time and was seen to be sellouts. I think in a more English way, you'd hear, snitches, right? And snitches get stitches, right? So if you want to think of it in the English way, it's something very similar. In the African context, these are people in the colonial period that used to give intel to the colonialists, and then so were known to be the people that sold out their own people. And so when you think about whistleblowing in today's world, in the corporate setup, I think there needs to be that appreciation. And that's why we push for things like awareness, and we push for trainings, we push for the fact that what we're trying to drive is transparency and accountability, and just having the integrity within the workplace, and being able to have people be able to feel free to speak up without fear of any pushback on their jobs or any retaliation of any form. So it's a journey, I think, that people need to appreciate, especially multinationals coming into the region. I often get into conversations, not just with my clients, but even various stakeholders, to say, why do we have a whistleblower line but never get any whistleblower reports? Why are we paying to have this line? We absolutely fine. There are no issues. But actually, when you look at it, the cultural context matters in that people don't willingly just report because there's a brotherliness within just when you talk about
difference.
And when we say Africa, we obviously generalizing, and these are 54 states that have different different cultures to them. But there's some unique similarities that we have as a people, in that you'll hear people say, hi brother, hi sister, even if it's someone from Morocco and someone from South Africa and someone from Kenya. And I can say this because, as you know, I was born and raised in East Africa. I got married in South Africa. I do lots of work in West Africa. And so this is something that I interact with quite a lot. If I move from South Africa and go into Nigeria, I'll say, hey, sister, hey, brother. It's a very normal thing for us. It's not that normal for someone to say, come from, let's say, Sweden and go into France, say, hey, brother, hey, sister. No,
it doesn't happen in the Western world.
It's not as normal as it is for us in Africa. But again, when you come to the cultural context, that context really matters when it comes to things that reporting. And so, again, goes back to things that we need to think about when we're setting up our compliance framework, our compliance structures. When you set up a whistleblower line, how do you promote awareness and training to ensure that people understand it to be a channel that they can use to actually report for purposes of transparency? And an organization needs to take accountability. What's the tone from the top in respect to reports that are made through whistleblower lines? Because if you have a whistleblower mechanism in place, but actually reports never get investigated in the right way, there's no accountability, there's no action that's taken, people then think, why should I risk reporting? Even if I report anonymously, how does it help? Because no action's ever taken anyway. Or if I report, how am I protected? And so you find, for example, in South Africa, there's legislation in place that is the Protection Disclosures Act, the PDA, that actually helps protect whistleblowers. But that's from a legislation perspective. What we try to encourage organizations to do is to put in place procedures, policies that actually protect anonymous reporting, protect, even when an individual is brave enough not to be anonymous, protect whistleblowers to allow them to have longevity in the organization. Because once you report, of course, an investigation needs to be undertaken. You'd hope so. But this person still remains within the organization as a whistleblower. So how do they continue to exist without any fear of retaliation or being looked at as a snitch, right? And that's where the awareness comes in, but that's also where the accountability and the tone from the top from organizations comes into place. There have been many accounts of whistleblowers being killed in South Africa. I have a personal friend that lost his life last year. He had reached out to me to say he wanted to change jobs, and shortly after he was killed for investigating a matter that was about 1.8 billion rand irregularities within the municipality that he was working in. We also know of a lady, Babita Deokoran, who also lost her life for investigating a $20 million case. It's now being probed at various levels within South Africa. And so we have realities of whistleblowers being killed, but more concerning is that we have investigators now also being killed. And these are corporate investigators. We know law enforcement investigators have been killed as well, but now even corporate investigators. And so we have ongoing conversations within the community in South Africa at various levels, within the professional bodies, trying to understand what measures we can put in place to ensure the safety of investigators, but also the safety of whistleblowers. Now, when it comes to Africa, we generalize and say Africa, but the different jurisdictions have different legislations in place for protection of whistleblowers. To ensure that, at least from a legislative perspective, there's a protection of people that actually come up and speak up. But what we also strongly encourage organizations to put in place measures to protect individuals that are brave enough to speak up, and also take action if there's any retaliation.
Yeah. And of course, protection towards the investigators as well.
Exactly.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry to hear that you experienced that, especially when it's a friend. Speaking of law enforcement, how do local laws and law enforcement impact the effectiveness of these investigations?
I think we've had good cooperation and collaboration from the law enforcement, but it varies. It varies significantly. It varies jurisdiction to jurisdiction. There's some countries where the law enforcement actually has not had an appreciation of what corporate investigators do. And so there's a limitation in terms of cooperation with investigators. There's also, I think, private investigators that are your briefcase consultants that might not have the standards that are required by organizations to actually conduct themselves to be able to work with law enforcement. And that confusion then we faced with some sort of resistance from law enforcement bodies that are actually also set out to support with investigations. But it's worked quite well in mature markets. I would say in South Africa, where law enforcement bodies are looking at certain cases, they've got massive workload on their tables, where they have organizations that are supporting on conducting investigations, internal investigations, and working with them. They can be quite cooperative and share resources between the two to support with getting to conclusion of certain sensitive cases. But in markets where there's that maturity hasn't, gone to that level of advancement, there's pushback on getting support and cooperation from law enforcement bodies. Same with the regulators as well. Sometimes regulators want to proceed, but they are not really sort of happy or comfortable to share resources with independent corporate investigation teams. And so it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, I would say.
Yeah. Have you ever personally been affected by, threat to life for investigations, such as whistleblowing?
Yeah, I think being in the field for this long, I would say many of us have at some point faced something very similar to being threatened, or just being in a case where you can see all indications of risks to your personal safety. I was very fortunate to work for Control Risk, which has a security division, which obviously puts in place measures. But I would say very similar to that, very many international firms have security as a priority now. And they ensure that from the get-go, once you start planning your investigation, this is a critical aspect that you have in your planning process. Okay. When I was at our Christmas dinner for our women in investigations, a joke was made on the day. It's, for the first time, we're sitting around the table, but we don't have close protection officers at the table that's next to us, because that at some point had become almost the norm. We would sit down and have dinner, and we have like a separate dinner table where we had like CPOs sat at that table for almost everyone that was having dinner that day, because there was a time when there was a lot of risk to different cases. And these are all women from like different organizations, different bodies. And they had their own matters that were running. But because of the risks, they had all hired close protection officers to work with them. So it was a reality. But I think what's critical for us is to continue ensuring that part of the planning process of the investigations that we conduct actually takes into account having security detail, because you need to plan and plan adequately. And sometimes it could be visible security. Sometimes, depending on the nature of the matter, it could be security detail that's not exactly visible, because you want to sort of keep a balance between what could actually present as a threat. Because sometimes actually having visible security could be the threat itself.
That's true as well.
You could be inviting external parties to say, actually, who is this person and why are they being...
With close protection as well.
Yeah.
It makes you feel, sometimes it can be seen as someone a lot more, you are important, but as in sometimes for an outsider, it can sometimes show a bit more attention.
You're drawing and perhaps you're drawing the wrong attention, right, to yourself. But again, the jurisdictions matter. For example, when I land in Nigeria to deliver an investigation, I need journey management support for all my movements. And I need to ensure that I have people around me that will provide me the necessary support and security. And that happened on all my deployments into Nigeria, and will continue to happen on all the deployments that we have happening in Nigeria. Jurisdiction to jurisdiction, it changes. That's a normalcy. And it's become a normalcy in certain parts of the region. So let's say northern Mozambique, you also need to have the right level of support, right? When you're deploying to Somalia, you need to know what area you're deploying into for you to have the necessary security support. So it's something that I say as a mandatory task has to be taken into account at the planning phase of any investigation. Even before you deploy for your mandate, you need to plan and say what type of security, and have the right experts in the room to advise on what's the right level of security that you require. Is it visible? Is it not visible? Is it, so how do you plan it out? Do you need for the whole investigation, so some parts of the investigation? But that part of the process has to be undertaken right from the get-go. And actually, there's some mandates that you might get and say, this is a very high-risk mandate. Maybe I shouldn't take it. Okay. Right. Because it's too dangerous. And I know for sure there's certain mandates in South Africa, though here, this is a mandate in this part of the country. And some investigators will say, no, it's too high risk for us to take on that mandate. And they step away from the mandate. So it does vary. But I think the security risk assessment part is a part that needs to be undertaken for sure. Mandatory part of the process, of the planning process.
Do you also take this risk assessment, when it comes to personal and life as well, because of your profession?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not just in our line of work. I think, again, South Africa, for example, has high crime rates.
Yeah.
So not just from a work perspective, but just from a personal perspective, Yeah. And that's why you'll have some families who will be flying in to take a vacation in certain parts of South Africa, and they will contact us to say, can we have security support? And they're just coming on holiday, but they know that from what they've read online, they know certain parts of South Africa have higher risks to them.
Yeah.
So it's all rounded. Now, if you're deploying into a country that has a much less risk of crime, then they're different, they're different planning processes.
Needed.
For example, if you're going to Zanzibar.
Yes. Love Zanzibar.
Love Zanzibar.
For those that don't know, my family is from Zanzibar, and I was speaking to Joyce about it, and she was like, "Yeah, it's paradise," and I have to agree. There's not much threat there. You can enjoy the wonderful beaches. So a little shout out for Zanzibar.
Yes, a little shout out there.
Speaking of your personal life, and of course, some of these investigations, we can't help but take them home or think about what we were investigating. How do you decompress or have that pause between work and home life?
That's a very good question. And I think it's an important discussion to have, because most of our work doesn't allow you to pause, but you need to force stop. You need to force stop. I have a toddler, so he is my automatic button to force stop. At least for a few minutes. But I think you need to be more intentional about it for it to happen, and for it to be a moment that you take to sort of decompress. I love spending time with my son. My older son, he's 10 years old. So he's a really good first stop for me to, take a pause and spend some time with him. We call it Mommy Son dates.
That's so nice.
I'll take him on a date. I took him on a date in Manchester when I was there last week, and it was such a great. We actually went to the Selfridges, and I had a first stop.
Nice.
Yeah, we had a really cute 1.5 hours. So that is really a good time for you to sort of first stop and take the time to rebalance. Yeah. So I would say it has to be very intentional, and find something that helps you first stop. If it's golf, if it's paddle, if it's time with your girlfriends or time with your other friends, find that time.
Take that time.
Take the time. Take the time. If it's one day over the weekend, if it's half a day over the weekend, but just be intentional about taking the time and find that which fulfills that first stop time for you and optimize it, because it's not going to be lengthy, but it has to be purposeful, it has to be meaningful, and it has to achieve that aspect of fulfillment, that you've taken the time to stop and refresh.
Feel refreshed.
Yes.
To come back.
Yes.
Back to the investigations.
Yes.
Okay, so looking back, what is one lesson this career has taught you that also applies beyond work? So something that you can apply that, you've learned, which also can be used for other aspects of your life.
I think purpose. Purpose is a thing that I found this career giving. You get to the end of a mandate and you help provide solutions, and you leave a mandate finding that you fulfilled a certain purpose for which you went into that case to solve. And it can be quite frustrating, actually, if you don't close a case or solve a case. And sometimes I say to my team, sometimes finding nothing is a good sign that nothing existed. Yeah. Don't feel that, because I didn't find something, I can't close a case. Maybe it's a sign that things are actually working well, But I think for me, one lesson from my career that has translated into my personal life is purpose. Finding a reason to do something and closing it well has translated that into my own life. growth in my career has made me grow as a person.
Yeah.
And that's given me the purpose that I find fulfillment in.
Mm-hmm. And especially with your other, women's forums and groups that you have, that really helps bring your purpose to others around you. And I think that's really fulfilling as well. So we're getting to the last segment of this episode. And you get to choose your own question, but it will be dependent on what asset you choose. So, Joyce, what do you choose? Cash, crypto, or commodities such as gold?
I would want to say crypto, but I don't know too much about it.
Well, we'll go with crypto then. Why not? So, the question for you that is assigned to crypto, essentially, but it's how important do you feel empathy is in financial investigations or helping a victim?
I think I alluded to this earlier about the empathy. I think one thing that we often need to realize is that we're dealing with people, not things. And empathy goes a long way in helping you get to the answers that you need for your investigation, but also for life after the investigation, for the individual that's on the other side of the table. And that's where I think we often have a discussion with colleagues that are former law enforcement, that perhaps have certain ways of dealing with interviews sometimes, and we have to sort of...
It's not an interrogation.
It's not, exactly. And sometimes you have people on the other side being interviewed asking, am I being interrogated? And that's where the empathy comes in, right? Like you need to sort of help them understand that they are helping you as well, and you are helping them to understand and get to the merits and the facts of the case. But also, for me, I find there's a big part in the process of deploying empathy in an investigation, in the life after the investigation. Because you can imagine, sometimes I think about it, if I was on the other side of the table being interviewed and having to lay bare what does this mean for me after? And then imagine having someone being so horrible to you during the investigation interview process, and how that would torment you or traumatize you at night.
You would almost feel like, why did I speak up?
Exactly. Why did I speak up? Or why am I even saying anything? And also the type of investigations also matters. So for example, in sexual harassment investigation, imagine someone that is laying bare what has happened to them and then not having that level of empathy, right? It helps you as an investigator have the empathy to be able to connect with an individual, but also hopefully give them that sense of a safety net in the sharing process that they are offering you during that time that you have with them, very valuable time. So sometimes it's just an hour of an investigation interview, but for them, it lives long beyond that hour. They'll go back and replay it and say, did I say the right thing? Did I, implicate someone wrongly, or did I,
feeling judged?
Exactly. Exactly. Or do they feel judged by what they shared? So I think, it goes a long way. And with that comes experience. So you can be taught from a technical perspective certain things at the university, but there's years of experience that goes into how you create that bond and create that sort of rapport with the person that you're interviewing for you to actually have the right level of empathy. That also helps the person not think that now you're friends, right?
Empathy with the investigation, but also a healthy barrier.
There needs to be a healthy barrier where the person sort of doesn't misunderstand the rapport that you created during the process to think that, now we're friends, and then they're going to be calling you up and this happened like way past the investigation. No, there's got to be that healthy barrier that is a healthy balance between how you conduct yourself during the investigation process, but then also help the person post the investigation process not feel like they were subjected to a horrible experience during the discussions. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joyce, for joining me today. I am 100% sure my audience, viewers at home, will be so inspired with your story, probably learn a lot more about the landscape in Africa, South Africa in particular. And hopefully a lot of female listeners as well will also see that there are these groups, to actively join them and to build their own network. So to complete our episode, I'm going to pass you my book. And this is to pass on a question to the next guest on my podcast. But thank you very much for joining me today, Joyce. And I hope you really had a great time as well.
I had a lovely time and so happy it worked out. And thank you for having me. And to all your listeners, I'll encourage them to support you. I've had a really great time and it's been very insightful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to all my viewers, once again, thank you for joining me. Please leave a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed. If there's any further questions for Joyce, if there's any questions with regards to any of the women association groups that you'd like to join, I'm happy to pass on any information. And don't forget to press the subscribe button. Thank you and see you next time. Leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Leave a comment and let me know what else you want me to discuss. And subscribe to stay tuned for more.